Hello and welcome to Masala Podcast. I am so excited to do season 5 and to introduce you to this awesome guest I have today, Varsha Sharma. Varsha, welcome to Masala Podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's been such a joy. I've been following Varsha's work for the last maybe a year, 6 months to a year. And every time I read a piece that she's written or come across anything, she's like, I just got to kind of my arms go, yeah, I feel it too, I feel it too. So this is like a dream come true to sit across and have this conversation with you.
Thank you. I so appreciate that.
Varsha, let's start at the beginning. I know you were born and raised in Louisiana, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Would you mind telling me a little bit about those early years and how it was for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, born and raised in a small town in central Louisiana. And I love it. Like my family, most of my family is still there. I still go back and visit a lot. It was very defining growing up as somebody who was considered other in this area, both in terms of my skin color, my background. I'm the daughter of immigrants. My religion, I was raised Hindu. And so I do think those were very formative experiences for me for my entire life, that have led me to be passionate about, the topics and representation the way that I am. But I loved it. I have a lot of great friends still from my childhood, growing up in Louisiana. It's a very unique state among American states. I don't know if you've ever been there.
No, I
Um,
haven't.
but it is, and I love it for so many reasons. The culture, the food, the weather, the people. Southern hospitality is a real thing. So yeah, I had a great education. I ended up staying there for college as well, before I made my way to New York.
What was it like to be a young brown woman growing up in that part of America? What did that feel like?
Yeah. It varied. I would say it felt, I can't say I necessarily have like one memory, the earliest memory of realizing that I'm different from other people, but there are certainly like a series of memories that I have, of being made to feel othered by people at school or out in the community. Now, to my parents' incredible credit, they really banded together with other South Asian immigrant families in the area, and actually started a Central Louisiana Indian Association. So I was able to grow up, with a handful of other kids, and other young South Asian women who were also the daughters of immigrants. And that community became so core to me. But in general, growing up, it's the Bible Belt, extremely religious part of the US, extremely Christian, Southern Baptist, evangelical. So there was a lot of tension, sometimes between me and classmates, or if I tried to go visit like a friend at church because I thought it was a cool thing to do with my friend. I distinctly remember being 11 years old, and having the Southern Baptist preacher try to get me to sign a slip of paper that said, Jesus Christ is my one and only savior, and I accept that. I'm 11 years
Oh
old and I'm
my
like,
God.
I think I need to talk to my parents before I can sign this. So
Wow,
again, very formative, very formative.
I can imagine. And
Yeah.
what about kind of friends or other kids in school? What was that like? Did you feel like you
Uh,
fitted there or not? What was that
yeah.
like?
It's really interesting because, growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, and sadly, this is still true for parts of Louisiana and the South, um, there was still a lot of segregation between white students and black students in some of the schools that I went to. And we, like Indians or South Asians, we were always like the in between. So we could easily have friends in both groups, in both circles. And I loved that about being Indian. I loved that I could, go between the groups and be accepted, and hopefully in some cases like bridge those friendships as well. Um, but in general, again, like I had a very positive experience, with my classmates, with fellow students. I will say things changed after 9/11, as it did for a lot of brown people everywhere, I suppose. Um, the day that the 9/11 attack happened, a fellow student yelled at me to go back to Afghanistan.
Oh
And
my
I was like,
God.
first of all, like I was born here. Second, my parents are from India. It just,
Yeah.
the whole thing started. So, discrimination against me, my family, my parents certainly increased after that time. But again, I know that that's something that happened to a lot of people everywhere.
Yeah. And was it difficult at all to kind of bridge that gap to be kind of this young American girl, but at the same time, the South Asian girl? How did that feel?
Oh, yeah. I feel like I have had those dual identities my whole life. And it's really only in the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years as an adult that I feel that those have like come together in a more fluid way. But absolutely, the dual identities, the different cultures, all of that was it presented a lot of challenges for me growing up. I mean, I also, not all Indian immigrant parents are like this, but I have very traditional Indian immigrant parents who put a lot of pressure on me about pursuing a certain career or only marrying an Indian when I grow up, no dating, all of those kind of strict rules. So that was definitely a clash, but I think being born in the US and raised here, I always felt um pretty strongly that I myself an American. Even if other people were like, go back to where you came from or go back to where your parents came from. Um I never felt like I questioned the American part of my identity.
That's wonderful. Because often that creates a conflict within us, doesn't it? But it doesn't sound like
Yeah.
it did for you. And that's
Yeah.
really, really wonderful.
Yeah. I think
Um,
it made me that much more determined to say, hey, I'm just as American as you are, and in
yeah,
fact, my definition of patriotism might look a lot different to yours, and I think mine is the better definition. But yeah, yeah.
I saw this photo of you in one of your articles. You were from school and had all these things on it, right? Librarian, treasurer, squad captain, tennis captain. And it just kind of went on and on and on and on. So, were you, I'm guessing you were quite a high achiever. Is this like the South Asian, gene that kicks in? It's like, you've got to work really, really, really hard. Is that what was going on?
100%. My dad um drove us very hard in terms of academics, and then also extracurriculars and sports like tennis as well. But that was 100%, all from my dad. Homework on the weekends or no homework before TV at night. We were spelling bee champions, my sister and I, so
Wow.
we definitely were part of that that stereotype as well. But I don't regret any of it. I'm very proud of all of it looking back on it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Um, let's talk about words and books and writing. I have a feeling that it plays a really big part in your life. Can you talk to me about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've always been a voracious reader. Growing up, like my parents would say, you'd always see me with a book in my hand wherever I went, talking about the Indian community that I grew up with. Even when we went to other people's houses for pujas, like I would bring my book because I just always wanted to be reading.
Yeah.
And I think pretty early on, I had significant interest in politics, again, largely down to my dad, and then journalism pretty early on as well. And it was fiction writing, it was nonfiction writing. I did all of those things growing up, experimented with different types of it. My sister is also a writer. She's my older sister. So I think, that helped and that encouraged me. But I think words have an incredible power. They were either my source of escape if I felt like I wanted to escape into some fantasy land. They were a way for me to learn about other people's experiences, or to see with what experiences I myself identified with. And I've always been a huge fan of history as well. And so one of the things that I love about journalism is it is the first draft of history. The way that we report on the things that we report on, the stories that we choose to tell, the people that we choose to highlight, all of those are very specific choices. And again, being, a brown woman who didn't necessarily feel like I belonged in a lot of spaces growing up, being able to have the platform that I have now and make those decisions, it just feels really powerful. And I think of it as a real responsibility as well.
Absolutely. And I guess what words do, I think I'm talking about probably my own experience. What it did was opened up this world that wasn't immediately accessible or visible to me.
Yes.
I grew up in Mumbai, very poor family, very, very traditional family. And I think books opened up this other kind of universe. And for the first time, I saw other possibilities that I couldn't see in my immediate environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love the power of that. It's almost magical that it's like this doorway to this fantasy land, and you can be that person.
It is.
Really,
Exactly. And
isn't
it's
it?
just endless
Yes,
possibilities, right?
yes.
Like very fond memories of going to the library and just spending hours going through the various books or series or trying to decide what I wanted to read next. I mean, truly endless possibilities. And I'm also very much a child of the internet, internet digital native, sort of a social native, but a little bit older. I'm a mid-range millennial. And so again, having access to just all of the information that's available on the internet also felt really, really magical. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but just because we're talking about it and because you mentioned the word magic, um, I will say Harry Potter, a huge obsession for me growing up, continues to be. It's really disappointing to me to see what J.K. Rowling has become and the transphobic positions that she chooses to stand behind, because that series was such a source of solace for me growing up, like in so many ways and for so many reasons. And there's a brilliant quote from Dumbledore that she wrote, and it says, "Words are the most inexhaustible source of magic."
Wow.
And I completely believe that it is inexhaustible. You can achieve anything with it. And again, part of me like hates to quote that because of who wrote it and what she stands for today. But I did find a meaning in that growing up.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you.
Yeah.
Words were similar for me as well. So I guess words, your words, took you to where you
Yeah.
are now, the editor
Yes.
in chief of Teen Vogue.
Yes.
I'm going to say that again because it's so bloody impressive. The editor in chief of Teen Vogue. I mean, I'm
Thank you.
so, 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 I don't know you, but I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Um, so, what I love that in this role and in this magazine, you're pushing these conversations about identity and immigration and mental health and like big, big, big topics. And that's not the usual fashion magazine stuff, is it? Where does that come
Right.
from? Talk to me about that.
I mean, I'm glad you asked about my childhood because so much of it is what would I have wanted at that age? Because I did read these magazines regularly growing up, whether it was 17, Cosmo, YM back when it existed. And again, some of it I related to, like articles about what happens when you get your first period. Like all of
Yeah.
that is still important, and we cover
Yes.
that as well. But you think about who was on the cover of those magazines, and it was predominantly thin white women, and that was it, right? I never saw somebody who looked like me on one of these covers. And so to be in this position now and get to make those choices, it's just like it's the easiest choice in the world for me to say, like, hey, let's look at who we've historically excluded and let's give them a chance to shine. And those are some of my favorite covers and features that we've done. So a lot of it is about, what would I have wanted growing up? What resources can I provide to young Black and Brown girls out there today who may feel like they don't belong wherever they are? And again, being able to have a platform like Teen Vogue to do that from is just incredibly exciting.
I think it's phenomenal. Like, until I think I found your Instagram and then I was kind of following what you were doing, it blew my mind the kind of things you were talking about. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, imagine if I was a teen and I was reading this. It would be life changing in many ways because I never saw stuff like this. I like you were
Exactly.
saying, it was only very thin white women on the cover of fashion magazines,
Exactly.
and it was very much, I don't know, how to find a boy or whatever, like those kind of
Yeah.
things. Not that that's not important, but
Yeah.
it was definitely not about identity and politics and migration and all of this kind of stuff. So I feel like you've completely changed um, what we perceive as teenage fashion magazines. It's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. I just love it.
Well, I give a lot of credit and take a lot of inspiration from young people too, both my peers and Gen Z and maybe even a little bit younger. Uh, these the young people today understand true intersectionality, and they understand that you can be obsessed with fashion and also obsessed with politics and culture and whatever it might be. And more importantly, they understand how all of these issues intersect. So they know that fashion plays a huge role in the climate crisis, which is the number one issue that they care about, understandably. And so I also came into this position just wanting to make sure that Teen Vogue reflected how young people are thinking and feeling today. And it is very much that these issues are all connected.
It's so true when you say this. I speak to a lot of young people with some of the work that I do. And I love sitting down and talking to them because some of their perspectives are so amazing and things I've never thought about. And I think it's so, so, so important for us to listen to them and kind of almost let them lead the way because they're the ones that create change.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And we have to allow for that. And we have to take
absolutely.
heed, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And what you said there about fashion and politics, they are connected. Climate change and fashion is connected. All of it is connected.
Yeah,
And I feel like before we've occupied these bubbles, we're like, okay, I only do this and I only do that, and this doesn't talk to that. And the world is
exactly.
this one place and everything's connected. And if we're not thinking about it all together, we're not doing the right thing. So
Exactly.
100%, 100%. I'd love to come to some of the features that I've read in Teen Vogue and from you. I loved that feature you did with Miss Marvel. The I absolutely loved it. And
Yes.
again, I have never in any mainstream publication seen a character like that talk about partition, for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Yeah.
And that is phenomenal. Like, how did that come about? How did that interview come about? How did that piece come about?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It was probably different for you because you grew up in India. But for me, as an Indian American, I feel like I didn't learn about partition and how brutal it was and how many people died and how many people were displaced until much later in my life. And when I did learn as an adult, I was like, wait a second, like this is huge. Like I don't understand why I wasn't taught about this before. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. Our parents and grandparents' generational trauma.
Yeah.
They may not want to talk about it with us. I completely understand that. Um, but to have that personal experience, to not having learned about it myself growing up, and then to see that this show that is centered on a young Pakistani Muslim girl from New Jersey, a teenager, is tackling this, and not only tackling it but actually like sending her back in time to witness it firsthand. I just thought it was such a phenomenal way to educate people about this thing that happened, and also tap into that trauma that is in so many of our families, if not all of our families, in some respect, depending on how far you go back. And so Sana Amanat, who is somebody who I've admired for a really, really long time, because one of my pet obsessions, you'll see this with my Captain America shield right here. I'm also a huge superhero fan, huge comics fan. And she was the first person that I found out who was a brown woman who was like working at Marvel. And not only that, she's really risen through the ranks to create a lot of change there. And a big part of that is Miss Marvel, first the comics and the TV show. And so when the TV show came out, I knew that I wanted to talk to her. I wanted to talk to her about this storyline in particular. And again, seeing the reaction from people was really incredible. There were two camps. There were my peers and younger who were, the same as you. They're like, I've never seen this depicted on Western TV like this before. Like, this is amazing. And then there were a lot of people who like responded to me on social media about that interview. And they're like, I had no idea that this happened. And I
Wow.
learned so much about it.
Wow.
And I'm like, that, like, forget ratings, forget whatever else. Like, that is the success if you're teaching people about this.
Absolutely. And I think this is the point, when we talk about representation, and this is the point where key parts of history don't get told because the
Yes,
people who are telling them are not the people that it's happened to.
exactly.
Whether it's partition, millions and millions got displaced and murdered, and what you've just said, like that trauma lives on in how many generations and it carries
Yes.
on.
Yes.
In the UK, I mean, there is more and more conversation about partition, which is great. But what isn't happening is none of the kind of colonialism, none of it's talked about in the textbooks. Like most kids here have no idea that the British ruled over this part of the world for hundreds and hundreds of years. They do not know.
Wow.
Nobody
Yeah.
talks about it. And again, for me, it's such a shock because growing up in India, that was in the history books. We learned that. Like half of the history of everything we learned was the Indian freedom struggle, the colonial kind of movement,
Absolutely.
Jallianwala Bagh, where like all these people were shot dead. They're
Yeah.
quite brutal parts of history, but
Yes.
it's completely like as if it never existed,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you get people from those communities in places where we can create these stories, that's what comes out. And I think
Exactly.
that's phenomenal, absolutely
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
The other piece I wanted to talk about is Bridgerton, which I love. I'm a huge fan.
Yes. Same, same, same. As I'm sure you can tell or
I
already know.
can.
Yeah.
I can. And the fact that you share the same surname, Sharma,
That's right.
did not escape that.
Yes, no, I don't know if I can use the word, but I lost my shit when I saw
You
that
can swear as
those
much as you
characters were
like.
named the Sharmas. I was like, oh my God. And actually, like, credit to Netflix here. Like,
Yeah.
I tweeted that like ages ago when we first found out they were
Yeah.
going to be the Sharma family and just said something like, my entire life, I've never seen my name reflected back at me in Western media. I've never seen that kind of representation. Even though Sharma is such a common name, it's one of the most common names in India
Yeah, yeah.
and among South Asians. But I'd never seen it, and so I tweeted about that, and it got a lot of people noticed it. Um, and Netflix like specifically reached out to me because they also saw that and they
Oh,
knew
wow.
that this new season was going to have a lot of meaning for me personally, and they gave me incredible opportunities to talk to the cast, and I really, really loved it.
Fantastic. Now,
Yeah.
what I love, and you've mentioned this in your article as well, and I noticed these things, when I was watching it. Um, Cultural details. Again, we never see that
Yep.
unless there's a person from that culture. The Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, the Bollywood, like
Yes.
classic Bollywood track.
Yes.
And when it started playing, I'm like, is that? No, it can't be. It can't be.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, it is.
Yes.
And, I lost my shit too, you know?
Yes. Right. I know. We were all losing our shit watching this. Yes. And it
And
wasn't just us, it was the actresses too, because
I can imagine.
Charitra,
Yeah.
Charitra, who plays Edwina, told me when I was watching the screener episodes, like she was so excited about it, she didn't even want to spoil me. She's like, "Have you gotten to episode 6 yet?" And I said, "No." And she's like, "When you get to episode 6, listen out for the song at the beginning because you're going to love it." And it's just, again, it
Yeah.
seems like something small, but it's so meaningful to so
No,
many of us.
it
Yeah.
isn't small. And that is it,
Yeah. Yeah.
when you hear yourself and see yourself and listen to yourself represented as you
Yes.
really are, rather than
Yes.
this kind of pastiche of Indianness, which is sometimes
Yeah.
what you see on screen.
Yeah.
It just feels like, oh, you see me. That's what
Yes,
it feels like.
exactly.
You see me, you hear me, you know who I am. You've bothered to understand
Yes.
who I am.
Yes.
Like
And
that.
that is so powerful.
That is super. That haldi ceremony. You know,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's incredible. Like what Regency England, and you've got like this
I
haldi
know.
ceremony, and I think
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
And I didn't quite put it together myself when I first watched it. But again, the cast pointed this out to me. Something that was also really special about that is like there was no on-screen explanation of the Haldi. They were
Yes.
just doing it together as
Yes.
a family. And you can, as a viewer, even if you didn't know exactly what that was, you're like, okay, this is some important tradition to this
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
and this culture. And that's really cool too, because that means they didn't make it seem like super exotic
Yeah.
or something totally foreign. It was
Yeah.
just, it was there. It's just part of it, part of the show.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you're right. Like I didn't think of it in that way, but I think that's important as well.
Yes.
Because what that's doing, it's saying, hey, here's a beautiful culture doing what they do normally. Because that's what you
Yeah.
do, right? If it was an
Yeah.
Indian family having a wedding, you just do whatever
Yes.
you did. It wasn't like a big song and dance, right? Oh my
Right.
God, we're going to do
Exactly.
this culturally relevant thing, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
The other thing that Bridgerton did for me, and I'm sure it did for you, is I thought, oh my God, we are sexy. We are beautiful.
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
I couldn't
Absolutely.
take my eyes off the screen when, the what's the older daughter, what was her name?
Kate. Kate.
Kate Sharma.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
is stunning and she's dark and she's beautiful.
Stunning. Absolutely. No,
And
when
I, sorry, go on. We're getting excited
No, I was
now.
just gonna say when it broke records, because obviously the first season
Yeah,
also did really well and
yeah,
broke
yeah,
records.
yeah, yeah,
But season two like smashed some of those
yeah,
records, and that feeling of knowing that like the romantic leads in the
yeah,
number one show in the world on Netflix were these two young, dark-skinned brown women.
yeah.
Again, it's just never happened to
It
us, right? Like we've never
never,
we've never seen it. It's never happened. And the colorism part of it, I think, is a huge
yes,
part of the conversation. I mean, you can
huge.
see me right now. I'm North Indian. I'm definitely a lighter skinned
Yeah,
Indian. Simone and Charithra are darker skinned. They're
yeah,
Tamil. And that is hugely important too, because colorism is still a
massive,
huge problem in our culture among our
massively,
families
yes.
here in the US and
Yeah,
the UK and back home in India. And so that feels really, really important too.
massively. I think, until I probably moved to the West, I thought I was really ugly because people called me that because I was darker. And it's only when I moved to the West, I remember looking at myself saying, they're all trying to be like me. So which must
I
be,
know. Exactly. Exactly. That has
you
always
know?
befuddled me. Like when I first went to India and saw
Yeah.
Fair and Lovely, I'm like,
Yes.
what is this? There's such a thing as skin bleaching? People do that? I'm like, everybody back home is trying to
Yeah,
get tan and be
exactly.
darker. Like it's
It's insane.
bizarre.
It's
Yeah,
insane.
it is. It
But
is.
coming back to Kate and coming back to the kind of beauty of Indian women. And
Yes.
for the first time, I felt like, oh my God, we're desirable,
Yes.
right? And I have
Yes.
never seen that before in that
Yes.
way, that
Yes.
we are vibrant, we're desirable, we're really fierce, we're really female, and we're very Indian, and all of
Yes.
those coexist. And that's never
Exactly.
happened before.
Yeah. No, it's incredibly exciting and empowering. And again, even sort of like the trickle down effects, like Charithra told me she really admired the way that Simone carried herself on set and how comfortable she clearly was in her own body with some of these nude scenes or sex scenes. And she looks up to her. She's like, I hope to get to that place someday as an actress myself. So down to you and me, the viewers who are just watching this and feeling that way for the first time, to like the actual members of the cast who also are dealing with those feelings themselves. It's super powerful. And then I think the other person that I give a lot of credit to in the US is Mindy Kaling, of course,
Yes.
who has written these characters who are young South Asian women on TV who are extremely sex positive,
Yeah.
extremely confident, maybe boy crazy in some cases, like on the Mindy Project. But
Yeah.
again, just
Yeah.
refreshing to see ourselves in these ways.
Absolutely. And again, in Mindy's shows, I love the detail. The saris, the
Yes.
puja room, talking to Krishna.
Yes.
I've
Yeah.
never seen that before,
Yeah.
or never
And
have
again,
ever.
it's very casual. It's very
Casual,
casually
exactly.
done. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's just like
Yeah.
having a chat with Krishna. Big
Yeah.
deal.
Ex-
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
I
It's
loved that.
amazing.
We've never seen that before, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so tell me now, with more and more of these kind of representations on our screens and on TV, in magazines like you're doing,
Yeah.
does it feel like things are changing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I would have loved to step into this role at any time, but I really feel like I stepped into it at a time when South Asians are rising forces or finally getting acknowledgement that we are due in media, in fashion, in entertainment and culture, in politics. I mean, we've got the first Indian VP in Kamala Harris, right? Like Black,
Yes.
South Asian, first woman, like she's all the things. It's incredibly
Yes.
exciting. So it really it's only accelerated since I've taken on this role, and it's been really special to become a part of this growing community, because everybody is rooting for each other, right? We're all cheering each other along, and this is something I actually had the chance to speak to Mindy about at Teen Vogue Summit, which is like our big annual event that we have in LA. My first year, Mindy and Maitri from Never Have I Ever were the headliners. So it was the three of us
Fantastic.
on a panel together, which also just felt amazing, right? Three brown women on stage
Yes.
in front of hundreds of people. And talked to Mindy about like her time as being the only woman and the only person of color who was writing on The Office in those early days of the industry where there weren't a ton of people like her. And going from that scarcity mindset of thinking like there's only one seat at the table, and so
Yes.
I have to be cutthroat and competitive, and even maybe go against my peers or other Indian women in order to get this one seat, going from that to where we are now, where we're just like filling up the room in
Hmm.
so many ways. Like there was this incredible celebration of South Asians at the Oscars, and
Yes.
just a huge party. The number of people nominated, the number of people involved in these projects, it's just growing seemingly exponentially every year. And so I really do feel like things are changing a lot. And it's beautiful to see us kind of all come into these positions of power at the same time, because again, we're all helping each other.
You know, it's so phenomenal. Like sitting here, like I've been kind of watching your Instagram feed, and I can see, quite a few South Asian women that I follow. And it feels like there's a real surge right now in this
Yes.
last kind of year, 6 months to a year. Like
Yes.
you're all kind of spurring each other on, like you've got each other's backs and you're kind
Yeah.
of really out there. And what you just said, like all three of you on this panel at the
Yeah.
Teen Vogue Summit, I mean, that says a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the Diwali party, oh my God, I lived
Yes.
vicariously. I literally went through every photo thinking, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I wish I was there. I
You'll
mean,
have to come. You have to
oh my
come this
God,
year. Yes.
that's my
Yep.
dream. Like to
Yes.
be at the White House Diwali party is the dream. I cannot tell you, seriously. If I get invited, I'll be like, I'll pray to Krishna.
Yeah, and it's amazing that they did that. And Cal Penn, who is somebody else who's become a friend
Yes.
and incredible support and mentor, and is somebody else who, like Mindy, he was one of the only people early in the States who was breaking through in media. He actually helped coordinate the first White House celebration of Diwali back in Barack Obama's administration,
Wow.
because he worked in the Obama White House. And that was a huge deal and obviously like historic. And you go back and look at those photos and it's amazing. And it's a small gathering of people. And now you come to 2022 and we are filling up the White House, like every room, the whole lawn, taking over. It's just, again, incredible to see the progress and feel like, it's a real moment. It's a real moment.
I feel it. I really feel it. Sitting here in
Yeah.
London, I look at those pictures and I know that it's happening. And it makes me
Yes.
so proud and so excited and like, yeah, like cheering. And, like I'm the squad. It just feels
Yeah. I
amazing.
love it. I love it.
So, talk to me about that Teen Vogue cover featuring Charitra Chandran. I've never seen
Oh my
anything
God.
like it.
It was my favorite, my absolute favorite. It was so special. Again, as soon as I knew that this new season was going to feature Charithra and Simone, I knew I wanted one or both of them. And it made sense to have Charithra, the younger sister, the younger actress, to be on the cover of Teen Vogue.
Yeah.
And I was so excited that she was excited and interested and willing to do it as well. And so again, one of the important things to me is as a journalist first, because I'm actually the first editor in chief of Teen Vogue to come from a real journalism background, not just fashion. We've had these incredible fashion creatives and leaders who have been EICs in the past. But I'm excited to bring, this other dimension to it. And so to me, it's not just important to put people on the cover who look like us, but to make sure that we are being thoughtful through all
Yeah.
parts of the process, that the writer, that the byline on the piece is somebody who doesn't normally get a chance, that the photographer is a woman of color, that the stylist is an Indian British, incredible mind. And he did amazing. And I adore him. And so having that, the crew behind the photo shoot, behind the scenes, and behind the article and story itself, having that be as diverse as possible as well, you get the best creative results. And so like the stylist Nikhil, for example, like just by dint of him being British Indian and me being Indian American, we're able to trade ideas very quickly and easily and understand the language that each other is speaking. So it was actually his idea to get certain elements of our culture into it. So like a thumbs up bottle or a
Yeah.
bag of namkeen. And I just like, I died when he was like, I'm bringing these to set, like garlands of marigolds. And I was just like, yes, like,
Yeah.
let's see what we can infuse without being over the top.
Yeah.
Keep it, a creative, highly stylized fashion shoot. And the combination of all of those elements, I think, just came together really, really beautifully with that cover, and with that entire shoot, and represented, Charithra and who she is, and also represented, her background and her childhood and growing up too.
Absolutely. And it all came across like now you've told me the detail of it. Like without even realizing, I've picked up on all of that.
Yeah.
The detail, like the little armband she's got. That's got
Yes,
like an
the
Indian
jewelry.
motif, I think.
Absolutely.
I
Yes, it
remember the
is.
marigold. I remember the
Yes.
details without really, and I'm like, what you've done there is like it's high fashion
Yes.
with like an Indian aesthetic, but very
Exactly.
modern.
Exactly. It's not over the top. It's not like
No,
beating you over the head with it. It's
no,
elements that are there if you're looking. And then even her pose, because
yes,
Shrithra, I think, was a trained Bharatanatyam dancer growing up, and some of the
yes,
poses that she did with her hands and her arms were like those poses, and that ended up
yes.
being the cover shot that we went with, and it was amazing.
It was incredible, absolutely incredible. You
Yeah.
just
Thank you.
phenomenal,
Thank you.
phenomenal. So tell me now that you've done this and all these features that we've just talked about. Do you now feel more of assimilation between your Indian side and your American side than, say, when you were a young girl growing up in Louisiana?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. Again, it still feels very new
Yeah.
for sure, but having the chance to do this and to teach other people about it, and to bring other people into the fold, uh it's incredibly exciting. And again, it's about finding your people, finding that sense of community that we have found, among this rising South Asian creative class. And there's so many things that go into it, right? There is, the obvious connections that we all share culturally and historically, and then you peel back another layer, when you're like first gen, second gen children of immigrants. One thing that also unites us is that a lot of us, defied our parents by going into the fields that we went into.
Yes.
And that's just like immediate
Yeah,
solidarity and
exactly.
connection that you feel with
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, it's that connection is amazing. I definitely feel more, at peace between, the two halves, or the dual identities of myself. But I definitely feel like we've got a ways to go. Like
Yes.
there's much more we can and should do.
Yes.
There are many more positions of influence that I want to see us get to. But it's incredible progress for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess coming back to some other bits of your career before you kind of headed up Teen Vogue, you were at New York Times, you were an editor at Now This, and all
Hmm.
these other big, big names. Something I really want to talk to you about is your interview with Barack Obama.
Yes.
I saw that and I'm like, oh
Career
my
highlight.
God, I want to ask her about that. Tell me what that was like.
Oh, career highlight for sure. So that was when I was at Now This, and I was the managing editor and senior correspondent. It was 1 week before the 2016 election, so
Wow.
incredibly pivotal time. And Now This, we've been working. The editorial mission of Now This is news for young people by young people. It's actually very similar to Teen Vogue, which is, I
Mm.
love Now This, and I love Teen Vogue, and it felt like a very natural progression. But it was our mass appeal to young voters, that made Obama want to sit down with us and talk to us, because he knows how important young voters are. And they ended up being critical to, any Democratic victory that's happened in the last 10-15 years. So that was just an absolutely incredible experience to get to interview him, on behalf of our audience, to ask him about the issues that our audience cares about. Again, climate change was a big one, and that came up. It was also at the time that everything was going on with the FBI investigation and Hillary's emails, and we actually ended up breaking news on that because I asked him
Wow.
about that as well. And so again, there are like a couple levels there. Like, so happy to be a representative for young people. Happy to be a South Asian woman journalist interviewing the president. Like, that meant a lot. We talked about his daughters, his relationship with his daughters. It was also around the time that the Trump Access Hollywood tape came out. So sexual assault was a huge topic. And that came up in our conversation as well. Just like, how do you talk to your daughters about these kinds of
Wow.
issues that are coming up?
Wow.
And so it's just a fascinating all around conversation. And I'm so proud. I would be proud anyway, but I'm so proud because we were told we had 10 minutes with him, but I stretched it to 22 minutes. And I'm extremely proud that I was
You
able to
should
get him to
be.
stay with me for that
You
long.
should
Yes.
be.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get a lot of messages and emails from young South Asian women who see the work that you do, who see what you've done and what's possible. What do they say to you?
It's one of my favorite parts of the job, if not my favorite. I think, again, early on, I didn't even realize what my appointment as EIC would mean to other people. I knew it was a big deal. It's exciting. I'm the first South Asian editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. That's great. But I didn't quite realize the power in it until I got this random Instagram DM from somebody who told me they were a young Indian woman who was studying fashion, and they were about to drop out of school because they felt like it wasn't worth it, that they weren't going to get far. And she said, she's like, but I see you're the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue. And I'm like, wait, maybe there is a place for me in fashion, and maybe I should continue. And messages like that where hopefully you can provide like the motivation or a little bit of proof for people, that you keep working and we can absolutely get to these positions. That just means the world to me, because it goes back to being that young brown girl in central Louisiana, and not knowing that I could end up being the editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue one day, but knowing that it was something that I wanted, that I was interested in. So again, being able to provide that for other young people is just absolutely incredible. And again, going back to the idea of, maybe having to prove to your parents that this is an acceptable career path, that's not lawyer, doctor, engineer.
Engineer.
Yeah, there's another young journalist who was fighting with her parents about her job, said, I showed you to my parents as proof that like I should continue in journalism because, again, like, success is possible. And that just means the world to me. I myself had to fight with my parents about this career path. Like, my dad still guilts me about not going to law school. But it's worth it. It's all worth it.
Wow. Imagine the lives of all of those young people you're changing in
I
like
mean,
little
if
towns
it's
and
yeah,
cities, and wow. You're showing what's possible.
I hope so. I hope so.
I know so. I know so.
Thank you.
Okay, now to talk about something really, really serious, Varsha. I would
Okay.
like to know about your favorite namkeen.
Oh my God. Nobody has ever asked me that question. I love it. Oh my God. And I've got an immediate answer. It's Deep Foods Extra Hot Mix. Like, that
My
is
mouth's
my
watering. I
jam.
don't even know what it is,
Yes.
but my mouth's watering.
Oh,
Describe this to
so
me.
good.
Describe this to me. What does it taste like?
It's the extra spicy version of
Amazing.
it, and I love it. I love it. Ever
Amazing.
since I was introduced to it when I was like 12, I feel like it's become my comfort food since then. Which again is another reason when I saw like the bags of namkeen on set with Charithra, I was just like, this is such a moment for me personally. Like, this is so
On
wild.
every level.
It's so wild. Yeah. Do you have a favorite namkeen?
Gosh, yes. I love, the pepper banana chips? Do you ever
Yeah.
have them? They're like more a South Indian thing, I think. So I love that. I love the save. It's like a very Bombay thing. It's like
Oh
this
yeah. Yeah.
really thin, deep fried. Obviously, it's all deep fried. Very, very crunchy. And I
Yeah.
always keep like a bag in my kitchen.
Yes.
And every time I'm like either super stressed or super happy or anything in between, I can go get that bag.
Yes, exactly the same. I'm exactly the same.
Any other kind of Indian food that you love? I'm curious to know
Uh
what's your thing.
Yeah, well, my mom's roti and aloo is my favorite.
Oh
That's
my
just, it was
God.
like my favorite growing
Is
up.
that like an aloo paratha? Or is that something different?
No, it's like aloo
Like
paratha.
it's
Yes.
like aloo paratha.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Love pani puri, love dosha.
Mm.
I
I
mean
love that
all
you
of it,
said
really.
dosha, not dosa.
Yes.
Top marks.
Thank you. And a mango lassi. You can't go wrong with a
You
good mango lassi.
cannot. You cannot.
Yes.
I love
No.
doshas too. And appams.
Yes.
Have you ever had appams? They're like
I
from
think
Kerala. So
so.
they're like the soft,
Yes.
spongy bit in the middle and crispy on the
Yes.
outside. Oh, I
Yes.
love an appam. That's like favorite.
That's very good.
Appam and egg curry, like brunch favorite of all time.
Yes.
Um, okay, now that we've talked enough about food, tell me about your projects. What have you got coming up that you're really excited about?
Great question. So we have a couple of covers coming out that I'm excited about. I can't unfortunately share details
Sure,
with
sure,
you.
sure. Of course.
But I'll say watch this space. We've definitely got more
Yes.
exciting representation coming.
Awesome.
Um, one recently completed project is our new Hollywood class. It's an annual issue that we do highlighting young talent in Hollywood around Oscar season. And so our new Hollywood class just came out in March, April. And that is just an incredible group of young people that I would recommend everybody look at. They all get their individual covers and features and a photo shoot. And we've just got great, video content and interviews with them that will be rolling out continuously through the year. And then I'm really looking forward to this year's Teen Vogue Summit. It's absolutely my favorite event that we do. It's usually every November in LA around November, December time. And it's, the best chance that we have of meeting our readers in person. And that, it's just such a special experience, and everything that we've kind of been talking about, um, supporting each other, community, solidarity, empowering each other, not competing with each other. That's all true of the Teen Vogue team and audience as well. And so honestly, it just feels like a big love fest when we get together.
Wow.
And it's such a beautiful day of meeting and networking and just celebrating each other. And yeah, I love that event. So I'm looking forward to this year's Teen Vogue Summit. And then also looking forward to also celebrating 20 years of Teen Vogue. So Teen
Wow.
Vogue has now been around for 20 years, and we've got some fun ideas cooking to celebrate the anniversary.
I cannot wait. I absolutely cannot wait. And I'm going to keep an eye out for this Teen Vogue Summit. It sounds fantastic. Sounds
Yeah, if
absolutely
you happen,
brilliant.
to be able to come to LA, like, you are always welcome.
Yeah, I would.
It's an amazing event.
Sounds absolutely brilliant. I'm definitely going to keep my eyes out for that. So I've got a little question for you. So what would Varsha, now sitting here, say to Varsha, 5-year-old Varsha, sitting in, I'm going to say Louisiana because I'm
Yeah,
assuming that's where you were.
that's where I was. Yes.
What would you say to her?
Oh, great question. I would say to her to uh stick with what you love. Stick with your passions, because it's going to all work out.
That's beautiful. That is really beautiful because it's that, isn't it? We're told that stop daydreaming, stop this, get practical, but actually, no, keep dreaming, right?
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
advice.
Exactly. Yes. I can't
Absolutely.
tell you how many times my dad told me I had pipe dreams growing up. But that's exactly it. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
that
yeah,
discouragement. So I'd say keep dreaming for
yeah,
sure. And to, calm any sense of anxiety. I think
yeah,
it means a
yeah.
lot to me to say, like, it's gonna work out.
It's
Things are
going to
gonna be
work
fine.
out. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And even with your dad saying that, or any of our parents, or, older people in our life saying that, it comes from their own place of anxiety because they've never had
Yes.
that. So I think
Exactly.
we've also got to understand that they're not saying it to kind of destroy our dreams. In their
Absolutely.
minds, they're trying to look after us because they've never had
Exactly.
those opportunities. So they cannot
Yes.
imagine a world in which you happen, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it took me, again, being an adult to realize
Yeah.
that. But, their ultimate goal for me was always like financial stability.
Yes.
So of course I understand why you only want to push us into three professions that have that kind of financial stability that you're looking for as an immigrant to the US. Like, I totally get it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Last but not least, What advice would you, or what words would you have for listeners of Masala podcast?
Ooh. Uh, about anything in particular,
Anything you
just in
like,
general?
just general
Okay.
life advice or whatever you feel like.
Uh, okay, I'd say South Asians really are having a moment across industries. So please go out and celebrate it and take advantage of it. And if you've ever had, doubts about pitching that podcast idea or the show idea or writing a feature, and absolutely remember you can pitch Teen Vogue at any time, just do it. If you've got something that you want to do, even if you've got a lot of anxiety or fear about it, just go for it, because we are in this incredible moment where a lot of us have opportunities that generations before did not have. And I just want to see us all take advantage of it.
That's fantastic. We've never had a moment like this, actually. When you were speaking, this is what I was thinking. This has never happened before,
Never happened. It's amazing.
isn't it? Like I'm getting
Yeah.
goosebumps.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
all of us in all these parts of the world are kind of rising creatively, doing these amazing things. And the world is there for us. It is opening up to
Yes.
us, which has never happened
Yes.
before. So this
Exactly.
is the moment.
This is the moment. Now is our time.
Woohoo! Thank you so, so, so much, Varsha, for your, you're brimming with joy and energy and positivity and, all sorts of wonderful things. And it makes my heart like really, really happy
Thank you.
to be talking to you, to be seeing you on the screen. Thank you so, so, so much for being a Masala podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.